The following content has been provided by RWTH Aachen University.
So from there, we basically get to what you could call transaction systems. And in the 60s, early 70s, these moved to one big change, which was now you could actually interact with the system and immediately get some sort of response. So you would provide your input on distant terminals for a special purpose application at this point. Most of these things, these innovations first happened in a specific area of application, and then they were sort of created more generally for general purpose computing. So here you'd have the user at a terminal, and the basement there'll be the mainframe. There's a serial line going from A to B, and a lot of people could use the computer then at the same time. And when you were typing these things here, what you were typing here, until you actually hit the send key on your terminal keyboard, it wouldn't even go to the main computer, right? It was basically just a dumb terminal collecting your input, and then it would go to the main computer that would do the actual stuff. The concept behind this, of course, again, was time sharing. So a lot of people having remote access to a computer was a big advantage to this model. In fact, the sort of concurrent time sharing system, which was something developed in the early 60s, was sort of the prevalence of this, or the precursor of modern operating systems. This was done at MIT, and then they developed the ITS, the incompatible time sharing system. Of course, programmers like to make fun of other systems, and that basically ultimately led to Unix as a programming, as an operating system. The original input was basically you had a remote station like this, which was a teletype, so a system that was used also for sending messages between remote outposts, over telegraph lines. And you would type your message here. It would go over a serial line to the computer, which would be far away usually, and then it would come back and would create the output maybe on one of those strips here, as you can see again, sort of punch card-like output here. This later on, of course, changed and moved to what was called glass teletypes. So now we had a computer station that was actually, had a monitor and a printer, but the concept was still the same. You would create your little input, send it to a computer, it would come back. Command line interfaces like Unix actually use that basic form of interaction to this day. When you work on like your typical Unix command line or DOS command line, while you're typing your command, it's just this tiny little one-line editor, if you like, that is running, a very dumb thing that is simulating this box, essentially a remote terminal. And only when you hit enter and the command actually gets submitted, it's sort of a job that then gets processed, gets executed, and then the results come back to you on the command line. And that's still how simple command line tools like list the contents of this directory or stuff like this, or even running something like GCC works even today. Nielsen calls these 1D interfaces. So now we have basically an interaction of I type strings of characters and the computer can answer back. The advantage of that, of course, is that now you're no longer waiting a whole day for the results of your input, but you're getting it back within maybe seconds or fractions of seconds. But it took a long time to move beyond these things. And again, the fact that inventions happen long before they actually catch on broadly is illustrated best by Memex. Memex was a system that was proposed as a vision. So not a working system, just a vision of how people might interact with computers in 1945 by Vannevar Bush. And he imagined that pretty soon there will be these desks that will be sort of devices that store all my books and records and all my communications. And I can access all that information quickly and do flexible searches. Memex was, this article here is cited to this day as one of the most sort of visionary depictions of how the future of computing might look. And it has become true to a frighteningly large degree, actually. A lot of the predictions were right on. It predicted hypertext, it predicted the PC, the personal computer, the internet, World Wide Web, if you like, speech recognition, online encyclopedias, in a way, Wikipedia back in '45. So that's why we want you guys to look at this reading assignment and understand what this early vision of computing was about. Remember, when he did this, the ENIAC computer, the one that I showed with where you would plug cables and stuff, was just being invented. It wasn't even quite there yet. Okay, so this was really, really early on. Here's a quick video that sort of shows how we might envision the Memex to work. This was done in '95 to show the invention at work. I think, yeah, the video should run now. So here you have sort of your desk that is standing there. And back then, there were no hard drives or anything like this. So he was imagining a lot of things.
The owner of the Memex,
let them tell us. Okay, so we're now looking into the box, sort of in a way, and can see what's inside there. There's rolls of microfilm. That was the idea back then, and these will basically be projectors that show part of this microfilm to you, just as this side thing here would show to you. So the whole system was basically using analog technology in a way, because hey, the computer hadn't been invented yet, but the ideas are sort of very, very much visionary in the way that people later on decided to structure or to design computers and online interactions. Okay, so that's the Memex from 1945. When we look at, again, when we try to move beyond sort of the pure textual sort of linear communication between me and the computer, and move towards graphical interaction, the first systems, again, that did this were very special purpose. For example, the radar system, SAGE, that was used for air defense in the 60s in the US, offered you sort of a graphical user interface. So you would see planes coming in that were depicted on a screen that was similar to a large oscilloscope, and it would show you where planes would be coming from, and you could basically select them and find out information about them. So this was, if you like, an example of a very first graphical user interface. You could see the flight paths of planes arriving and things like this. SAGE was a sort of nationwide system in the US. It was basically stood for semi-automatic ground environment radars. So you get from radar to phone lines, to the computer, to the CRT here, this tube, and then to the operator.
This content was provided by RWTH, Aachen University.